Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Madeline Krieger from Winebow Imports. Thank you for joining us for today's conversation with Madeline Triffon and Louis Barruol. The chat is open, so feel free to say hello and share your location. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel. If we don't bring them up during the webinar, we will be sure to save time for questions near the end. I would now like to introduce Madeline Triffon, who, as many of you know, is the first woman in the United States and the second woman in the world to have earned the title Master Sommelier. After a brilliant career directing restaurant programs, 10 years ago, she became the Master Sommelier at Plum Market Stores with locations in Michigan, Metro, Chicago, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and Dallas. Madeline, we are thrilled to have you join us today, and thank you for your leadership, your vision in wine service, and your dedication to education and hospitality. Without further ado, Madeline, take it away.
That's the introduction from a true friend. Thank you, Marilyn, for your two kind words. The best part of my career is that I've spent it tasting wonderful wine and meeting the people whose hands have created it from the earth. And I had never met Louis Barruol before. So this is a great treat for me. I'm very happy to be part of this tasting. The conversation today with Louis, everyone will think of him as being absolutely a great producer, not just in the Southern Rhône, but in France. And, for all intents and purposes, for those of us who are qualitatively driven and can recognize good wine, synonymous with Gigondas. And what's exciting about today is we're going to be focusing on his new estate, of which he's quite passionate. And I think this is the beginning, Louis, of your name becoming synonymous with Vinsobres. So I'm happy to be part of that. If you'd like to say hello to everyone, and then I'll show a picture of where we are going to be in the world.
Nice, thank you very much, Madeline, and hello to everyone. We miss the US with all this COVID crisis. We cannot travel and come and meet you, but at least a webinar is a really good way to do it. So I'm really happy that I can give you a proper presentation of this really pretty incredible place.
And a little teeny piece of housekeeping, because some of us very patiently and politely wait for us to describe the wines before they start tasting. So please, we're encouraging, if you are tasting and you have the 4 wines in front of you, to go ahead and pour them. They'll open up in the glass beautifully, and to taste them at will. And when we get around to discussing them, it will be about halfway through the presentation. So to everyone's health, good cheer, and our extraordinary world continuing in an uplifting way, I'd like to say that. So Louis, here we are. We have a beautiful map that shows where Saint Cosme is located in Gigondas. And we are, as the crow flies north, I thought it was 30 kilometers, but you corrected me, and it's actually 20 kilometers to Vinsobres. A couple of pieces of information about Saint Cosme. It would be remiss of me not to mention that this was the estate which Louis is very much associated with, that he took over in 1992. When he purchased it, it was 15 hectares, and it's grown to 30. And now I'm talking about Saint Cosme specifically. He is your family's been involved with for 5 centuries at Saint Cosme, which is quite extraordinary. I don't even know how many generations is that of that. But you have converted to organic and biodynamic viticulture there in no small part thanks to your father's love affair with nature, which I'm sure you'll talk a little bit more about later. But we are going to Vinsobres, which you can see is tucked just under the Alps, under 10 kilometers from the Alps. But we have a wonderful shot that's live. And you should comment on this, not me, Louis.
Yeah, it's what the aliens see when they are gonna come and get me from the space. No, it's a great idea from Madeline to show you this this quick film. It's great because it shows the proximity of the Alps. You're going to see in a second. So you see the how close is Vinsobres from these big mountains, and it explains a lot about the microclimate of this place. I don't like hot climates. I think great wines are made in cold climates. The best expression is in the northern limits of where the grape is able to grow. So basically, this is why you don't have really the best Pinot in Burgundy. I mean, there's nothing really north of Burgundy in terms of fantastic Pinot. It's the same for Cabernet. It's the same for Syrah. There is nothing north of Côte-Rôtie in Syrah because it's a question of ripening rhythm. You need to ripen slowly, and then you need a tempered, if not cold, climate. So Vinsobres is one of them. But to come back a little bit to Saint Cosme, if I can, Madeline, I would like to add a couple of informations. 500 years is 14 generations, but the most important is the work my father did from 1957 to 1992. Yes, we certified in 2009 organic, but my father had been organic forever. He was very involved in the protection of nature. He classified all the woods of Gigondas village. So this is why we are now the cru in France who can claim more woods than vines on its territory, which is quite phenomenal. And he did that with the other guys of the village in 1978, when organic winemaking, organic vineyards, and protection of nature meant nothing. Let's face it, in the 70s, nobody talks about that. So, okay, it has become important for many people, and it's a great evolution. But I just wanted to re-say how he had anticipated that. I'm really proud of what he has achieved. So our idea has always been wines from cold climates and limestone. And when Rouanne came for sale, it was one of our partners for the Negos wines, and I really couldn't leave this place go to another person.
No, but I understand this was a childhood friend of yours who owned this estate. I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but you didn't buy it from a stranger.
It's a 3 generations friendship, as the grandfather was a friend of my grandfather. I'm talking 1940s, right? So it's a long friendship, and basically they were quite happy to sell it to us. And we keep going with this great story. It's a fantastic piece of land with a great terroir in a quite large scale, which is quite exceptional. It looks very Burgundian in terms of slopes, and the terroir is truly incredible. I mean, make wine at Vinsobres, it's my third vintage right now. I mean, I literally finished the harvest at Vinsobres today. I mean, this afternoon we were picking the last Mourvèdre. And actually, I'm gradually discovering that this place is like a crazy horse, which can run so fast, but has to be trained, has to be controlled. The potential is so high that we need to bring plenty of control on that.
And you have become, now that land has become your family, so I think it will know that your control is very loving and gentle. So just to remind us all about the obvious, Vinsobres is now considered a cru. It was formerly Côte de Rouanne village, and it was recognized as such in 2006. And you know, again, to go back to Louis' statement about the Alps, it's really the northernmost cru in the south, in the southern Rhône, and we can't overstate the influence of the Alps, which become, you know, what, 9 kilometers north, become very high, and you've got all these winds coming down, which aren't cool, they're cold. And, you know, having heard you speak about this before, it very much impacts the style of the wines. I think you said once that you couldn't make overripe wine here if you tried, you know, because that is the nature of this this site, and it is as historic a site with its Roman beginnings as Saint Cosme, correct? I mean, you have actually excavated pottery and other remains that show that it was more, a little bit more upscale in terms of the society of the people who were living there in ancient times, correct?
Yeah, the way the two domains are parallel is really incredible, since you talk about great soils, you talk about springs, you talk about Roman sites, very important Roman sites in both cases. You talk about a very long and interesting history. It's these two places don't look like, but look alike.
And we should show a picture. And I want to encourage everyone, by the way, I'm sure lots of questions will occur to you, and we are very intentional to leave at least 10 minutes at the end. My really unhappy task is to make sure we keep on track, because Louis will be the first one to tell you that 1 hour talking about this site is too short, but we want to make sure that you've got plenty of time to ask your questions, and please do put them in the Q&A if you remember. If not, I'll keep an eye on the chat room as well, and we'll address as many as we possibly can. So this is the main building on the property, correct?
Yes. So that was built in 1820 because the original castle was entirely destroyed during the French Revolution. The revolution was very violent in Vinsobres, and it has been very tragic. But originally the castle was medieval, had been built in the 11th century. So what you see is a rebuilding attempt after the French Revolution.
I'd love you to talk just, sorry, excuse me for interrupting you, Louis.
No, I wanted to jump on the viticulture because it's highly important.
Sure.
What I bought is a plot of 62 hectares, which is quite massive. That's another view of the place with the nice tower on the left, which you find on the label, right? This is what you see on the Rouanne label. Yeah. So to jump on the viticulture side, I mean, what we took over is an old vineyard. It's old Sélection Massal, planted between the 50s and the 70s. And for me, it was a crucial aspect. I wouldn't be motivated to work with young vines and clones. I think most of the soul in a wine comes from the fact there is a genetical diversity in the vineyard. So it's a lot of work because we have to take over an old vineyard which requires a lot of work and love. But I prefer this than never have the potential. I mean, I had a discussion with Emmanuel Reynaud from Château Rayas a few weeks ago, and he told me something really tragic and really and so true. He told me, I really worry for all these young growers who plant vineyards with clones, with no diversity. And he said, how are they gonna handle that? Even if you are the best winemaker in the world, you cannot make a great wine out of this. So it really is a big point with Rouanne. The vegetal heritage is like Saint Cosme. You talk.
Well, I want to ask you a
wine.
specific question about that, and I'm interrupting because it's a good reason. I think in our previous discussion, I had really wanted you to talk about the soul of the place because it was something that was important to your father, and he didn't see the fruition of this estate, but you refer repeatedly to Monads, M-O-N-A-D-S. How did you recognize Saint Cosme? What was it about? I mean, not Saint Cosme, Rouen. What was it about it and the connection to Saint Cosme that drew you to purchase? This is over 60 contiguous hectares, which is really extraordinary for any estate.
Yeah, actually, the Monad is the impression that you have when you live, when you work, or when you visit a place, and it's the idea that we cannot disconnect vineyards and winemaking from the rest of the universe. We are part of a world, we are part of humanity, we are part of a universe, and you cannot disconnect things. So for us, it's fundamental that a good vibration, I mean, love for the world, the work we do is everywhere. It's the way we have been managing Saint Cosme for hundreds of years. And sometimes people come here at Saint Cosme and they say, "Oh, you're so lucky! It's so great here. It feels so well here." And I usually answer, "Yeah, it's great, but it's not being lucky. We have been forging that over the decades and the century. It's very, very important to think global, and this is why today I talk to you about Rouen, and I don't talk only about wine, because wine is a consequence of all these things put together. So this is what we mean by using the word monad, which is an English word as well.
Okay, now this is part of the soul of Rouen. What we're looking at, you have a constantly running springs on the property. You do not have to use the town's water source, correct?
No, we don't use the town water. We have these extraordinary springs, which is directly connected to the Alps. The amount of water we have, even in summer, is very impressive. And this is the only water we have. So all the cleaning of the cellar, all the water we drink or whatever, come from this spring. And what you see on this photo is what the Romans have been building to get this water through a kind of filtration system by building walls by the earth, and the water comes through the walls and then goes into the pipes to the farm and the castle and the cellars.
So we're benefiting from their technology, actually, and this is another view.
because you know chlorines, the chlorines that is being used in towns is quite bad for the cellars. I mean, it can be a problem. In a cellar, you really need absolutely pure, non-manipulated water to do a proper cleaning with no pollution and no influence on the purity of the wine.
It's another beautiful view.
So that's a view of the fountain with the lion's heads. Yeah.
So, oh, I see, right up here, yes. And
yeah.
So when we're talking about Rouanne, something that really struck me, because we're going to start talking about, the vineyards and your farming techniques. This was a little shocking to me because the exposition is the exact opposite of Saint Cosme, correct? These are southeast facing vineyards, and Saint Cosme is northwest. And you said that you get the sunrise here at Rouanne, and you get the beautiful light when the sun is setting at Saint Cosme.
Yeah, there is a debate in the world of the winemakers. The debate is, should the wine watch the sunset or should the wine watch the sunrise? Because it's not the same light. It doesn't give the same kind of wines. It makes a big difference because the leaves, the way the leaves open on the morning is not the way the leaves kind of close at night. And obviously those are two different lights. It's really interesting to see that Saint Cosme and Rouanne, as they are as late, so they both ripe very slowly, but for very different reasons. In Saint Cosme, the way it's late ripening, it's because we face northwest, and we have the cool flow of wind from the dentelle that goes into our little vale. In Rouanne, it's different. This is winds that comes from the Alps, take the cold from the Alps and regulate this big egg valley, and it makes this place as late ripening as Saint Cosme, despite the fact it watched the sunset. Sorry, the sunrise.
The sunrise, right?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why you will always find Saint Cosme Gigondas very different from Saint Cosme Vinsobres. And I am not here to make a wine which looks like Saint Cosme Gigondas. It would be a very bad idea. It would be a wrong path and not the right way to organize my work. I have to understand this place, get the sense of it, and find the technical ways to propose you the best possible translation. That's my job. The job of a winemaker is not to impose his ideas to a terroir and his recipes. You have to find the recipe for every single terroir. I've always tried to work this way. So for sure, there is always a signature because it's me, and it can always be an influence from the winemaker, but it has to be as discreet as possible.
And you have here,
So
can you speak a little bit to the soil? Forgive me for interrupting, so I don't forget to ask, because we're talking about a limestone-based soil here, correct? And sand?
Yeah, it's you have sand from the Miocene, which is quite similar to some places of Saint Cosme. Everything is very limestoney. We have a lot of red clay, which is something you do not find in Saint Cosme. And at the top of the slope, we have the Tortonian, which we have at Le Poste in Saint Cosme. So there is similarities, but the fact we have this big quantity of red clay, especially in Guérin and Rouanne-et-les-Crottes, makes Rouanne very, very specific.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have everything is converted to organic viticulture, and you have adopted the parts of biodynamic that are applicable to this estate in your estimation, but you are not going for biodynamic certification. Is that correct?
No, we have been biodynamic for 13 years now, but we don't certify it because I am totally against the use of silica. I think the use of silica, which is an obligation with a biodynamic certification, is a nonsense in Mediterranean climate vineyards. So I will never certify biodynamic because I do not use silica. So that's why. But yes, there is a lot of biodynamics methods that we have adopted, as well as other methods that focus on organics. So we converted Rouanne in organic viticulture immediately after the purchase. That means that, this is 3 years conversion. So we converted it in August 19. So 19, 20, 21. 21 will not be certified. Basically, even the vintage 19 is organic because we took over the vineyard in February 19. So it is totally organic, but the formal certification will be written on the back label for the vintage 22.
And here's your team.
The team is coming. Yeah. So Saint Cosme is obviously not only me. I have a great team behind me with a quite good proportion of women, I have to say.
It looks balanced, Louis. It looks balanced.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great team. I have a good. There's a couple of good brains, couple of good legs and arms, and they are all very brave. We are a good team altogether. I can certify that. What you see now is the cellar of Rouanne, which I really love because this is all built concrete, not the concrete vat that you buy and they come on a truck. This is built like
it's part of the construction of the room, right? It is
exactly, and the difference is that the walls are so thick that the temperature management is fantastic. With the concrete vats you buy nowadays, the walls are so thin, it makes no sense. You lose the entire interest of concrete vats. So this cellar is quite big. I mean, was built in the 50s of the 20th century, and it really is a great cellar. Yeah, it was another big aspect of our decision, because I think great Grenache wines, great Southern Rhône wines should be made in concrete. I mean, I am a fan of concrete and wood. I don't like stainless steel, so yeah, it's a good place to make wine. And obviously,
can you speak a little bit to the techniques that you're using, because we're going to talk about the wines very quickly, and these are very specific techniques that you hold dear: the whole cluster ferment, wild ferment and no filtration,
yeah,
correct?
well,
And co-fermentation.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I am gonna adjust very much all the techniques to Rouen and not reproduce the recipes, but as a grower, you have a couple of principles, a couple of big ideas. In my case, this is co-ferment the grapes together. This is wall clusters. Everyone know that Saint Cosme is a wall cluster winery. It's the way we go. Obviously, indigenous yeast, wild ferments. Yes, that's very important. Never add something from the outside. Work with the natural yeast is very important. And yes, none of our reds is filtered, so the Rouen wines are not filtered. Obviously,
Now,
they are not fined either.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm showing the shot of barrels because on some of the lieux-dits, of which there are, I believe, 4, and we're tasting 3 today, you are using a combination of smaller barrels and demi-muid, correct? For aging occasionally.
Yeah. By the way, this is a view of the cellar at the aging cellar at Rouen, and it's funny because when they were in the old times in the 19th century, they would make more ship than wine at the time, and this place was used as a stable. It was they were aging a sheep in here, not wine.
Oh, sheep.
So sheep, yeah. It was a stable. Yeah.
We've already talked about terroir a little bit, but is there anything else you want to tell us about the specificity of the terroir of Rouen, and then we can start tasting the wine, especially, as you're trying to distinguish it from Saint Cosme, what makes it so unique? I mean, tasting the wines, the freshness is unbelievable to me, and I've jumped ahead a little bit.
Yeah, just coming back rapidly to the aging of the wines. We are still experimenting quite a lot on this, but it looks like what works really well in Rouen is demi-muid. So demi-muid is a 500 liters barrel. This while in Saint Cosme it's without a doubt the small Burgundian barrel 228 works beautifully in Saint Cosme, but I think Rouen will shortly be only demi-muid because they go really beautifully well with this wine. So yeah, that's part of the learning curve. The difference between a cook and a grower, a winemaker, is like a cook cooks every day, and the learning curve can be extremely quick. We cook once a year, so it makes our learning curve so slow, especially for impatient people like me. So yeah, it's quite tragic that in entire life you're going to cook like maximum maybe 70 times, which is basically not even a season for a cook. Yeah.
The lessons will be learned over that 11th month period. So I have actually put all the wines up here from left to right in the order in which we're going to discuss them, and they all are 2019s. I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A, and there is a question about the 2019 vintage, about how long these will age before their release. And I know you'll speak to this vintage overall, as they're all 19s, but we have the first wine is the Vinsobres, the second, and it's a little hard to see, but you can see the names of the vineyards, Les Côtes, and then number 3 is Rouen et Les Côtes, and number 4 is Guérin. And you'll forgive my, at best mediocre French accent, but let's talk about the Vinsobres. It was pretty good. Oh, good.
It was perfect.
I cannot speak anything other than present tense, Louis. So if I meet you, I speak mediocre wine French in present tense, but my teacher was Parisian, so I have a pretty good French accent. So let's
Nice.
talk about the Vinsobres first, and that is what, 50% Grenache, and the balance is Syrah with less Mourvedre. What is it, like 10% or something like that?
Yes, actually, to come back a little bit to the three lieux-dits and the classic, the way I work at Rhône, which is totally different than the way I work in Saint Cosme. I work per altitude on the slope, because it's Rhône is a slope, and you know, we all know. I mean, this works in Burgundy, Germany, Côte-Rôtie, everywhere there is a slope. The bottom of the slope, yeah, thank you. The bottom of the slope, the middle of the slope, the top of the slope works on a very different way, give very different results. And one day, many years ago, I had this tasting at Clos de Tart, and I could taste all the different
Elevations.
elevation wines in Clos de Tart, because Clos de Tart, you usually drink a bottle and this is all blended, right? And when you taste the different bits of Clos de Tart in the cellar, you suddenly figure out there are three very different wines, okay? And when I took over Vinsobres, Rouanne, I remembered about this tasting, and I thought, well, it's probably the right way to explore this vineyard. This is the way we handle it. It teaches us. It gives us a lot of information about what we should do. It's really highly interesting. And as 19 is a truly great vintage. I mean, we were lucky to begin with a truly fantastic vintage. We decided to release the three elevations of the slope. So Guérin is the bottom of the slope. That's the vineyard just under the chateau.
There we go.
And then Rouanne et Crotte, yeah, well, yeah, around here, yeah, Guérin, okay, this is here below the chateau. So more organics, more clay, a little bit more rich soil, which gives a wine with more softness, more fruit probably. And then the middle of the slope is named Rouanne et les Crottes, and this is where the wines have the most deep depth, complexity. They are very, very expressive. And the top of the slope, called Les Côtes, is where the ground is the poorest, because basically the water goes down and take the organics down the slope, so that the level of organic components is not as high. So this is where you get a bigger mineral expression.
And you were at what, almost 1,000 feet above sea level, correct? At Les Côtes. So it's significant altitude.
It's basically exactly the same at Saint Cosme. In meters, I don't know in feet, but in meters, it's 220 meters altitude. It's the same as Saint Cosme. So yeah, it's a significant it's a significant elevation. So on this drawing, you really see the three different level of elevation, which goes with three very different soils. And it's really interesting because these three different places were already mentioned on the Cassini maps made in the 17th century. You take the carte de Cassini from the 17th century, and the three places are already clearly delimited and identified.
And named.
So
they're named. That's
named,
amazing.
yeah, they are named in the 17th century. So there is a stage when you try to understand the place, you have to begin to listen to history, listen to the older people, listen to the neighbors, watch the place, listen to the others, and not necessarily yourself.
That's right. So let's taste some wine, Louis, because I know that they want to hear you describe the wine. Something that I'm always reminding myself and the people that I'm lucky enough to work and play with like you is that everyone likes to hear you describe the wine. And quite often that's not the case. We listen to ourselves describe the wine, you know, but I don't want to hear myself talk as much as you, and you're going to describe the 19 Vinsobres to us. And this was the first vintage, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were 100%, it was your hand on this wine, correct?
Yeah, 100% me and my team. And so to describe a little bit, the classic is our classic, like the Gigondas classic. So it's let's say it's 80% of our production. So it's our most important wine, and this is a blend of Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre with predominance of Grenache, obviously, but there is a lot of Syrah, like 30%, because Syrah is very important in Vinsobres. I mean, as a cold climate area, the results Syrah give are really impressive, I have to say. So yeah, we love them. The three grapes work beautifully there.
Can you describe the Massal selection a little bit? Because I forgot to ask you about this earlier, and this is incredibly important, correct? That this is a Massal selection.
Yeah, pretty much all the vineyards is Sélection Massal, because the clones appeared in France in 1978-79. And almost all the vineyards is from before this time. And what we are going to replant in the next few years is going to be Sélection Massal, because we only plant Sélection Massal. We do not deal with clones here. So I'm going to keep going with this. So the classic is.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you want me to, it's quite difficult to talk about a wine in front of a screen, but I will do my best to describe the classic. We talk about a quite a vintage of good ripening, but we always want a good amount of freshness in the wine. So the classic has to be balanced. It has it's quite a deep wine. It's quite masculine and profound. And I want to say these wines are gonna have a big aging potential. So if you guys can do that, please try to keep some bottles and give a chance on the long run to this wine. So I jump onto Rouanne et Les Crottes. Rouanne et Les Crottes is considered by the locals being the ultimate Vinsobres wine. It's the ultimate Vinsobres place. It might be true, I don't know, but this is all the vineyards behind the chateau. It's known to be a pretty extraordinary spot for winemaking, and this is true that when we vinify, we have a tremendous profoundness and an extra complexity on this wine. It's wide, it's deep, it's long. It carries a lot of fruit.
And it's saline. It's like a salinity to the wine. There's a saltiness to it that's wonderful.
Yes, saltiness is everywhere. I mean, saltiness, especially in Rouanne et Les Crottes, but this is a signature of this slope. It generates the saltiness in the wines, all of them. And it's very important in the southern Rhône, because we don't naturally have a lot of acidity. So if you get saltiness, it's a great element of freshness.
I don't think you're going to
Just
have a
like,
problem with acidity and freshness in this estate at all. It's extraordinary. I'm reminding everyone that we're at the middle of the slope, correct? And can you talk just for
Yeah,
my
exactly.
heart a little bit? The tannin management is wonderful because the wine is quite drying, but the tannins are soft enough that we can taste through the wine even in its youth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the tannins management is one of my main jobs for a long time, because when you work full bunches, it's again, full bunches is kind of a crazy horse that you have to tell off sometimes, because it can really go crazy. So that's my everyday bread. So we can jump on a Guérin if you like.
Sure.
Guérin is the bottom of the slope, and this is where we find plenty of fruit, plenty of softness. It's a very, very friendly style. It's sometimes it reminds us a little bit of Châteauneuf-du-Pape for the softness of the wine. There is less, a lot less angles, I would like to say. And
well, it's generous and it's really integrated and round, if I can use that word. I don't know how to say round in French, but it's complet. You know, it's complete.
Yeah, yeah. And the color is always a little bit bigger on this wine. It's a color of blood, really, and it's really incredible how you walk like 150 meters down. You're in Guérin, and the wine is so different. I mean, it's like the good comparison would be the Côte-Rôtie slope. I mean, in the Côte-Rôtie, you take the examples of the bottom of the slope, the middle, and the high bit is a very, very, very different. So I think it's a good way to read and translate this place. I want my wines be understandable by people, and if you go by the elevation, it makes the understanding of the place, I think, more interesting.
Somebody made a beautiful comment about the floral quality in all of the wines, and I couldn't agree more. They smell like dried violets to me. You know, there's a wonderful florality in these wines, but I love your comparison. If people want to compare it to something, it's got the sort of generosity of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, even in its youth, you know. What do we,
Yeah.
we're going back to Les Côtes for our final wine, correct?
Yeah, so Les Côtes is the top of the slope, and it's probably the wine which requires a long keeping in bottle, because this is where we have the most angular tannins. The mineral power is very, very big, and it's probably the most masculine wines of the three. And it's a bit of a paradox, because Les Côtes is on the Tortonian. So the Tortonian, as some of you might know, is the soil widely found in Barolo. Okay, so it should give something very round, but it doesn't. Not in Rouanne. It's a quite tannic wine, but the style again is so different. So much more masculinity and mineral by walking 1 to 200 meters on the slope. So there is more Mourvèdre in this wine, because we have more Mourvèdre at Les Côtes. So it is a different. It is a difference that should be mentioned.
So that changes both the fragrance and the flavor of the wine, and I would imagine the ageability. would you, the way we've described them, is it fair to say, and I hate to generalize, but if people were to buy all three, and track them year to year, would the Guérin be more expressive first, and then the Rouanne, Les Crottes, and then the Les Côtes, or is it too early for you to generalize about the three?
Yeah, it would be the right order to taste these wines.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure, because you go from the most you go from the fruit to the mineral, so it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I want to just, before we go on, I want to remind everyone we have Guérin south of the chateau, or actually, do you refer to it as a chateau? Yes. And then Rouanne.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, don't worry.
Sorry,
and then Rouanne and Les
didn't-
Crottes is in the center, and then Les Côtes is at the top of the slope.
Yes.
And then this is a little bit of a tease, correct? But we kind of pushed you into talking about this wine. And then to remind everyone, we're going to open it up to Q&A, and we've got a couple of comments in the Q&A box that haven't been addressed. But I find this utterly fascinating that you make this wine. Please tell us about this Brut Nature from Rouen.
Yeah, it's there is an old tradition of sparkling wines in this valley. Now nobody really does it anymore, and I think it's a shame, because with this cold microclimate, you can get Mourvèdre at 12 potential alcohol, fully ripe. And to make a rosé Brut Nature, I think it's just the perfect place. So our idea was to make a Brut Nature which would be totally dry. So that's the meaning of Brut Nature, and a rosé bubble which would be vintaged. So it's always vintage, and the sugar is under 2 grams. So it's dry, bone dry.
Dry, and this is
frankly,
50% Mourvèdre, correct? 50%.
Yeah.
Mourvèdre.
There's a couple of other grapes. I don't have a great motivation in going into details with this, because it's a part of the little secrets that we have to make.
We'll respect that, but we Americans are varietal obsessed. So I just think it's very interesting that this is a méthode classique made from, with the Mourvèdre base.
Yeah, I will never share everything about this, but I can tell you the Mourvèdre has a central position in the blend. So because I personally I really don't like the sugar in the sparkling wines, and Champagne, more and more great growers go for dry, bone dry, but there's still a lot of sparklings around with sugar, and it's not, the aftermath is not great. So we wanted to replace the sugar by simply by ripening, because I think there is no great wine without proper ripening. And the beauty of this slope is like you can really get Mourvèdre ripe at 12. At 12, it can be very black, and
we're talking about 12% potential alcohol, correct? Which in this day of climate change, right?
Yeah, because a bubble cannot be more than 12.5. Right. Over that, it's not nice anymore, because you cannot drink a lot of it, and it's horrible. So this is what we do, and my idea is to really propose a nice sparkling rosé, which is balanced without any sugar, with a sense of south, but a sense of balance. You'll see it carries quite a lot of freshness.
And I brought this slide up because it's so beautiful, the approach to the estate. If you can talk to us briefly, and then we'll take some more questions. So please start them coming in the chat room or the Q&A box, if you will. You know, if you can speak about Vinsobres in general, what excites you about the future of, you know, this appellation as a whole, and your wines in particular, if you like. What is it that you know raises your spirit so much about this place?
Yeah, well, it was classified in 2006 as a cru. So cru, to precise, is the same level, puts Vinsobres at the same level of classification as Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas, Côte-Rôtie, and Hermitage. But it means everything but nothing, because when you have said that, you haven't proved anything. I think this place has a tremendous potential. I think Rouanne in Vinsobres has a tremendous potential. And now it's a question of people, because terroir without people have no existence. Okay, if there is a great terroir in a place where there is no humans, the terroir has no existence, because it has no translation in terms of wine. This photo is really interesting because it's a view of Rouanne from quite far away, and it really shows how the slope looks kind of Burgundian in this place. You know, you have the flout, and suddenly you have this elevation of slope.
It's quite Burgundian visually. It's really amazing looking at it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And with
the woods at the top of the woods at the top of the slopes are very important, because they really regulate the temperature changes. So yeah, to come back to Vinsobres, I mean, there is a lot of work to be achieved, but we have the great wines, we have the will, we work hard, and we count on people to just say the truth about it. We don't need people to be over the top. We need a couple of friends who just say the truth about it, the truth about the greatness of this place and these wines. That's it. And it might take a bit of time, but it will happen.
We have a terrific question, because it has to do, you know, we've got red wines in front of us. We're talking about sparkling rosé. And then we have a question from our friend Ron Edwards. What do you see as the advantage of whole cluster fermentation for Grenache and friends? And also, is there any white wine in the future that came from the chat room? So if you could speak to possible white wines from this estate, and also
wall clusters is, I have tried everything with many terroirs many times, and wall clusters is the best expressions of the terroir. It brings plenty of freshness and balance and soul to the wine. So yeah, it really makes a big difference to the final quality. To answer to the second question about whites at Rouanne, it will never happen.
And why is that?
It is a place for reds and rosé sparkling. I have tried whites there because I have them. I use them in the rosé, right? So finally, you will know everything. But no, it's maybe on the plateau of Vinsobres, there are good examples of whites, yes, but at Rouanne, with our geology,
You're not
don't
excited
believe in
about
it.
the prospect from the
No,
sound of it. For you
at
to
all.
say
I
no,
think-
right?
No, I think it's a tremendous place for reds, and it's a very interesting place for
For sparkling wine.
rosé, sparkling, and I
Mm.
will focus on that.
Can you tell us, there was another very good question about the climate. Is there a significant shift in daytime and nighttime temperatures? Diurnal shift?
Yeah,
does
it's massive. It's massive. I mean, when we arrive in mid-October, because we pick very late, like in Gigondas, in the last 2 weeks, we had during the day, like we could go up to 23, 24 Celsius, and we were close to freezing at night. We were close to zero. We were close to zero at night, like 2 or 3 or 4 Celsius at night. So,
But Louis, that's a shocking difference. That's as much as anywhere on the planet, you know, in terms of
It
wine
is,
growing
but-
regions. It's
but-
huge.
but it's the same. It's the same in Gigondas, and this is the nature of late ripening places. You do not get this in early ripening places, because by the time your grapes are ripe by mid-September, you don't have the cold nights. You just don't have them by mid-September. So it's the nature of the late ripening places to have that, and it's very, very, very important.
No, thank you for
You would not-
intellectualizing that. Right. That's great to think of it in
You-
those terms.
You would not believe the difference on the Grenache, how the Grenache are different 15 days ago and now. They are totally different fruits. It's just unbelievable.
We have a question, by the way. I'm going back, if you don't mind, because she's been very patient. Jennifer asked about when you were talking about biodynamic certification, and you were talking about how silica is not appropriate for this region. Per my understanding, it's more appropriate for cold regions like Champagne. Is that correct? Because she wants to know why it's not appropriate to this region. And then, go ahead.
Okay, please first understand that biodynamic have been developed first in Germany, not on vineyards, but the Steiner was German, right? So that's Germany. And then when it began in France, it began in the Loire Valley, Burgundy mostly, and to a certain extent, Champagne. So you talk about the development of a practice in cold climate, northern vineyards. So basically the practices that have been developed are very related to what works under these cold and rainy climates. And then they took all this corpus of practices and said, okay, it's how it's going to work for everyone.
For everybody,
and we write,
right.
and we write everybody, and we write the cahier des charges of Biodivin and Demeter, and it applies to the guys in Roussillon, in the Languedoc, in Southern Rhône, where it's hot and we cultivate other things. The silica is used in the north to stop the growing of the vines, because in July, you don't want the vines keep growing, right? You want the vines, as good mothers, focus on their fruits and make their fruits ripe. So silica stops the growing of the vine, and then it helps the ripening. But it's a good practice in Champagne, in Burgundy.
But you don't need that help in where you are.
When the vines keep growing all the summer and they don't ripe correctly, it's a great idea, I have to say. But in Mediterranean climate, it's a nonsense, because under our climates, the vines naturally stop growing by the middle of July. And when you do that, you really damage the vines. I did it once in 2011, and I swear that I would never do that again. The effect on the leaves and everything is catastrophic.
No, this
So,
is a
yeah,
decision.
I cannot
why.
say. I just cannot say as a grower, oh, I want to look cool so I certify biodynamic. No, I don't care about looking cool. So that's why.
No, thank you for explaining it that way, because it's sensible and I've never heard anyone talk about it that way. We have a wonderful question from Josh Reynolds, and I'm going to read the whole thing. It's 3-part and it has to do with Grenache specifically. How about the problems with Grenache in these strange years and how it has so many problems? What is the future of Grenache with all the issues with the growing seasons? And when, do we look forward to more Mourvèdre and Syrah? So if you can speak to Grenache and any problems that you foresee, that would be great.
Yeah, I think Josh is talking about global warming. Yeah, Grenache is becoming in hot years. I mean, the alcohol levels can be a little crazy in the Southern Rhône, and we have to deal with that. That's true. Yes, one of the solutions is grow more late ripening grapes like Mourvèdre, like Counoise, for example. Cinsault can be a good direction as well, as Cinsault, for example, was working very well in Algeria in the old times. So
right.
These are good ideas, but you know what? With problems of this kind, with problems in general, I don't believe in miracles. I really believe in combinations of many different solutions. For example, with Grenache, you can work with plantation density. You can deal with a different way to manage canapé. You can deal with many things. You can mix trees and vineyards at the same place and go for shade. It's another possibility. I think we will have to mix plenty of little good ideas instead of trusting into a miracle which will never happen.
But it seems that where you are located too, very specifically Vinsobres, with the influence of the Alps has, is benefiting this subject. Are there other areas in and around Vinsobres that you're looking to either invest in or plant? Is that a fair question, since it's such a unique microclimate?
No, I am 52. Rouanne is a huge challenge. I give myself another whatever years to bring this place to a great level. So no, I'm going to focus on Rouanne. But to finish about Grenache and global warming, we are not different than others. We just have we are ahead. I mean, the fact we are late ripening gives us another 25-30 years to solve this problem. So yes, at the moment you want to be in the late ripening place, not in the early ripening places, because it gives us more time to react and bring solutions on the table.
Well, to that point, here's to a very long, healthy, happy life to you. And thank you for really a priceless introduction into a label that you will now be as identified with as Saint Cosme. And I appreciate your being so gracious in putting up with my interruptions, just so that we can get through the wines. And I will tell you, we didn't even talk about the Vinsobres Classique, which is much better, if I can say this, than the Italians say normale, right? But the Vinsobres Classique to me is so beautifully integrated, Louis. It's showing much like the single vineyards, this concentration, but with an approachable mouthfeel, combination of crisp acidity and smooth tannins. So I'm going to say a bientôt. I hope I make it over there if I can get on an international flight. And thank you very much for being so generous with we Americans. We love these conversations with you.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madeline. I want to thank you. I would like to meet you in person as soon as possible. It will be nice. And thanks to all the people who took the time to listen to the presentation. Thanks to my import wine bow who fixed this webinar, and the people who are involved in this, Lindsay, Nicole, and Marilyn, and obviously you, Madeline, and I say a big hello to all our American friends.
Thank you, and good luck with the rest of the harvest. And I'm glad right now it is your, what, 8 p.m. It's not too late. Good.
It's perfect. Thank you very much.
All the best.